Do you ever think when the Doctor shows up at the start of a story he gets deja vu? Oh, so I'm in a series of grey or off-white corridors and there's a race of human-shaped people being attacked by a bunch of monsters. Didn't I do this exact same thing last week? Oh, so I've shown up in a historical location. That means I'm about to run into a famous historical figure by random chance, and they're probably being bothered by an alien of some description. That's awfully convenient. It's almost as if this exact same thing has happened again, and again, and again. I mean, as much as we all like to make of Doctor Who being a show that relies on change, you do know basically what it's going to do every year. It's a rearrangement of the same components. Doctor travels Earth/universe with companions, and they fight monsters/see historical events. You expect the Doctor to battle the Master, the Cybermen, and the Daleks. I pointed this out in a video I made about Destiny of the Daleks the other year. When a character gets dropped in a corridor that looks like this in a story called Destiny of the Daleks, you know that this is where a Dalek is going to pop out. There is an extent to which the show is aware of the fact it's a work of fiction that relies on narrative conventions that it's been adhering to for decades. I bring all this up because of a couple of things. One is that I recently completed an essay on meta-fiction for my masters, so the topic of self-consciousness in fiction has been on my mind a lot lately. And two is that I recently rewatched The Mind Robber with JXE, and it prodded some thoughts out of me. The Mind Robber isn't totally unique in Doctor Who history. Many episodes have been trippy and psychedelic, but it's probably one of the strongest entries in the micro-genre of Doctor Who episodes that attempt to make the show into a cosmic, trippy piece of surrealism. An episode that allows it so fans can say, "No, shut up, Mum, it's actually an incredibly artistic show. It doesn't just repeat the same formulas over and over again to serve a diminishing audience of children." Episode 1 of The Mind Robber isn't totally like the following four. It's essentially a prologue to the story, and it's one of the finest creative accidents in the history of not just the franchise, but all of television. Because the previous story, The Dominators, was deemed to be not worthy of 6 episodes, its 6th one got cancelled, leaving them with 1 week of programming left to fill. And so a previously 4-part Mind Robber got stretched out to 5 weeks, and the first episode was hastily written at last minute and had no budget to work with. So what we have is the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe taking the TARDIS out of time to escape a volcanic eruption and ending up nowhere. A blank white void where nothing exists. But there's something not quite right about the void. It feels as if there's something out there. The Doctor insists that no one goes outside because they don't know anything about this place, but then Jamie and Zoe have visions on the scanner of their homes, calling them to go out into the void. It's a pretty simple sci-fi siren call story, but the atmosphere in this one is unparalleled, and that atmosphere is derived from the fact it doesn't explain itself. The sinister presence calling out to Jamie and Zoe to leave the TARDIS is unseen, and they just sort of find themselves following this unseen hand guiding them to leave the TARDIS and enter this unknown dimension. When they're outside, they get lost in the white void, and then these robots show up, and then they see copies of themselves beyond the void, in one of the weirdest, most haunting shots in all of Doctor Who. The Mind Robber Episode 1 just proves how much you can achieve with almost nothing to work with. The robots were actually props left over from a different BBC sci-fi show called Out of the Unknown. They were featured in an episode that got junked along with a good chunk of 60s Doctor Who. The fact these robots themselves are fictional creations from a different show that no longer exists actually works wonders for the overall premise of The Mind Robber, which I'll get onto now. So the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe are running around inside the land of fiction, a dimension constructed from stories from the real world, being overseen and written by the Master Brain. It takes them a while to figure out where they are and why random characters like these creepy children show up and say nonsensical things. The Mind Robber is reliant on dream logic. There's no solid direction of travel, stuff just sort of happens for the sake of, ooh, trippy. Like Fraser Hines couldn't be there 1 week, so what we do is we have him get shot, and that causes him to turn into a cardboard cutout with no face for some reason. The Doctor has to put his face back together, but he puts it back together wrong, and so that's why this week Jamie is played by a different actor. There's no real narrative point to this that serves the overall plot, but it's just such a genius fix to an internal production-related logistical problem that I can't help but applaud it. The Mind Robber is also easily one of the funniest stories in Doctor Who history. The fact it's absurdist and isn't bound by conventional narrative rules, and its characters are all fictional constructs who can behave in ways unlike real-life humans, means that many scenes just feel wrong. And that feeling of wrongness lends itself to both horror and comedy. You can laugh at some of the strange visual humour, but it's a nervous laugh, where you're not quite sure what the ultimate endgame of this visual humour is. You find yourself not trusting characters like Gulliver because they behave in such strange ways, because their functions can only be based on what's already been written for them. The Mind Robber is also notable for being the first story in Doctor Who history to feature the Master.
Perhaps you could help me, if you know your way around.
It is not permitted.
Who says so?
The Master.
The Master?
Yeah, it is basically a different villain with the exact same name, but this Master does bear some similar qualities to the actual Master. He even does the evil laugh.
He'll soon find out.
Although personally I think his overall presence should have been scaled back. Episode 1 works so well because the hand guiding Jamie and Zoe to leave the TARDIS is completely invisible. In episode 2 we see him as this cackling villain in his lair, and to me it just destroys a bit of the mystique. When the Doctor finally runs into the Master, he appears as this eccentric, chirpy old man writer, and it kind of knocks the wind out of your sails when you think, oh, this strange cosmic force responsible for this bizarre landscape is just a man like you and me. Which is kind of reflective of what happens when you learn about the real people behind these works that capture your imagination. Oh, so H.P. Lovecraft was just a bloke, and not like this bizarre being of darkness from another dimension. But what they do is they have M. Rhys-Jones flip between these two tones. He plays this quirky human old man writer and also the dominant controlling master of this domain when he's required to show his power over his captives, and he manages that beautifully. Personally, I think M. Rhys-Jones should be recognised as the first master. So basically this writer is ageing and will die, and since the Doctor has that whole lives for hundreds of years thing, they want to plug the Doctor into the master brain so he can continue writing the land of fiction, and he'll be trapped in this role as essentially the puppet of the master brain forever. The master brain is actually a great metaphor for the power that stories have over writers. We lose sleep over them, we stress about them to such an absurd degree. When we write, we feel like we're possessed by this intangible force controlling our actions. The Mind Robber is as meta as it comes. It's about the sinister and controlling nature that the very concept of fiction has over people. When it comes to selling this to the audience though, that's where the Mind Robber is likely to lose people, because it basically sounds like complete gibberish when you try and explain it.
This is one of the plot points where I'm like, okay, what was this, guys? They're trying to write the Doctor, they're trying to write stories about the Doctor before they happen so that they can make the Doctor fictional.
Yes.
That is nonsense. That's just a random string of words.
If we'd have fallen into the Master's trap, we would have become fiction.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh, that's horrible. Oh, that's horrible.
Zoe, you are fictional. You know, you're a character in a fictional piece. You know the TV show Doctor Who, produced by the BBC. I mean, yeah, alright for the sake of the story she's real, but this brings me back to what I said at the start of the video. There is a degree to which Doctor Who's internal universe operates as if it's fiction. The show is kind of aware of the audience in the way it arranges its familiar elements for an audience that expects Doctor Who to fulfill certain functions every time. You expect Daleks, you expect Cybermen. And the reason I'm talking about the way Doctor Who relies on formulas and is to a degree aware of its audience is that I would now like to propose a new fan theory. The Doctor never left the land of fiction. The end of episode 5 is incredibly abrupt and it doesn't really do a good job of addressing the stakes of the story. We started out with the TARDIS exploding, and then Jamie and Zoe got turned fictional by being crushed by a giant book. And episode 5 undoes all of this in such a slapdash way by just giving control of the land of fiction to the Doctor, and he thinks Jamie and Zoe back into being real, and they overload the master brain. And it just got me thinking that the reason for this sudden slapdash ending could be that the TARDIS coming back together at the end is also fictional, and every single story following the land of fiction is being written by the master brain. And what that would do is make total sense of the fact the Doctor can show up in a bunch of corridors with wibbly-wobbly monsters and a group of human-shaped creatures every week and not think, this looks exactly the same as the last time this happened. That's an odd coincidence, isn't it? Because the Doctor is fictional, and he can only recite what's already been written for him.
But you keep saying the same things. The TARDIS broke up. They're not real, they've been turned into fiction.
Yes, it does make sense, shut up.